Nau mai te iwi to the first ever podcast totally devoted to the world of haka. I'm your host, Kawariki Morgan, tutor, composer, and kaitātaki o Ngātu Manako. In this episode, I'll be yarning to my bro Tom Alesana, kaitātaki, composer, and tutor of kapa such as Te Whatukura, Te Poutu Maro, now Te Kuru Marutea. We'll be talking about his experiences and vision for the future of haka. Haka Live Podcast. Let's go! Kei taku rangatira, kei te hoa, Tom, nau mai ki tēnei kaupapa a tāua. E kōrero ana mō ngā reka o tēnei ao kapahaka, e kai ngā kaunuiti ana e tāua. Hei pātai i tuatahi ki a koe, tēnā, kōrero mai, ko wai koe, no whia koe.
Tēnā koe te hoa, nōku te waimari tēnā tahi ki a koe, o tira te whakawhiti kōrero.
Tēnā koe.
Ko tama Alesana tōku ingoa, tipu ake ahau i te waipaunamu, uri ahau o te tauihu o te waka, no reira, kurahaupa waka Ngāti Kuia, Ngāti Apa ki te rātō, rangitāne o Wairau, i te tāo tōku koreua, he tainui hoki, nā reira ko Ngāti Koata, ko Ngāti Toa Rangatira. Tōku kuia no Taranaki, Taranaki ki te tonga, engari, tipu ake ahau i roto i te māta torutanga o era whakapaparanga. Pekanga nōku ki Ngāti Raukawa, te au ki te tonga, tōku pāpā he hāmoa.
Koe. E hoa nau mai me o tapu me o mana. Kia hoki ngā whakaaro, kia hoki ngā mahara. Tēnā kōrero mai mo o tino mahara mo tēnei mea te haka i a koe te pumai ana.
Tētai o aku tino maharatanga i au must be toru tau pia. I rikoata tōku koreua i ngā mea Māori katoa i runga i tōna
VHS. Oara. Tēnā koe tō tāua rea.
I tipu ake au i tērā reanga. VHS, nā reira, ka hoki ngā mahara ki era rikoatatanga o ngā kapa pēnei te wakahuia, te wahirere, Ngāti Rangiwewehi. Ki te au i aku aunties, uncles i roto i ngā kapa o te waipaunamu, te whānau Brennan, i roto paunamu Ngaitahu, o Kāti o Tautahi i Rawa, o ku aunties and uncles i roto kia Ngāwari, te kotahitanga, whaatihima, ko era ngā ihopu manawa o te waipaunamu, nā reira, i tipu ake au i tērā reanga.
Ia tangata, i tupu mai tērā wā, e whakapono nui ana, te golden age, tērā, o kapahaka. Kāre kore he pērā mō a tāua tamariki, e tupu mai ana i tēnei wā, e golden age pia tēnei, a kā rau mōhio, engari, ngā raumahara mai o wara, ngā kai haka. Tell us a bit about growing up in the South Island, te tauihu, and was haka as prevalent?
Yeah, it was probably... my uncles and stuff went to university, and when they come home in the summer, they'd have these tapes of like all these teams and these, kapahaka, and that was like our eye into the bigger world of haka. And because, we didn't have the access, ngā tamariki o enei wā, he waimari.
Te pato, te pātene.
And, so it was, that was the insight that we had into the haka world. Growing up, we only had clubs, so schools were a thing. So we all belonged to clubs like Kia Ngāwari was a big club. There was like a club called Te Atawhai. There was Ngā Whatu. Like there was quite a few clubs. O Makahono mai over in Blenheim, Waikawa over in Picton. And so we grew up with knowing the clubs in the rohe. But also across Te Waipaunamu, because we used to have our Te Waipaunamu festival. Hasn't happened for a while, like for about 5 years now. But growing up, that was the haka event for us. So we'd have a regionals, but then we want to go Waipaunamus, and we want to go, and because it was as if like you could fit that many teams in a day now, but they would have like 12 like junior teams, and then like 10 secondary teams, age teams, and then like 8 or so pakeke teams, and they just fit them all on one day. Like I don't even remember how early or how late it finished, and like they'd have the prize giving at the end of the night, and so all the kids were like, oh,
Obviously.
yeah. But that was the Haka event outside of, coming up to the festival. That was like the main event for most of us growing up. Cool. Haere ki ngā waiponamus. That's how like a lot of us know each other, like into waiponama, is through that competition. Is because you turn up and you be like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, like there's a dance, and then your mates. And then you wait for the next 2 years, and you go back and you'd catch up with all of the whānau, and you'd watch all of the haka. And so that was our sort of big kaupapa for haka. And then slowly, as they started to develop mana kuratai, kura tuarua, that became the focus. And so,
now that kura tuarua and all of those things, have those clubs still, are they still running? Yeah,
so we're lucky kia Ngāwari, ki te haka tonu a kia Ngāwari. They had a bit of a break for a while, but I hoki mai ki te papatū waiwai. But they were still doing kaupapa, off stage. And so, and here, like I love my aunties and uncles that have been part of that legacy for so long. And my mum and my aunties and uncles were all part of that team growing up. And then they went on and created their own club. And so when I was younger, my uncles and a few of the other whānau started a school team. They put some schools together. They didn't have enough to have a team by themselves. Went to the Waiponamu, and they had no intention of carrying, like it being a thing. They won the Waiponamus the first time, and then that became the thing. And so, koe rā te orokohanga mai o te karapu o te whatukura. Tō mātou kapa o mua. But, they still do kaupapa, and they still go to Waiponamu, so we don't have a kapa pakeke. Engari, he kapa tamariki, he kapa rangatahi tonu. And we... The shift has, we've shifted from it being about the competition, but giving some of our tamariki that aren't in kura that do kapa haka the opportunity to have those experiences. And so we take them, to Waiponamu. A lot of them are green, but it's about giving them that opportunity, because all of our own kids are all in kura kaupapa Māori, are all in rumaki, and they go and they have haka all the time. Yeah. But there's these other kids that they want to know and they want to learn. Awesome. So kei te haere tonu ngā mahi o te whatukura, mō ngā tamariki me ngā rangatahi. And so I tēnei tau, ko te tau 50 o kia Ngāwari, me te tau 3 o te whatukura. And so it's so I grew up in both and was lucky to two vastly different styles. Like you got kia Ngāwari, Hare te me he ropu hahi, engari, there was that influence of the Church of Latter-day Saints. Beautiful singers.
Yes, I bet.
Yeah. E tamariki ana. You'd think you'd be listening to like a record of a group singing. That's how pitch perfect it was, every note. And our aunties still, when they sing now, they're like, they can pick out their notes and blend, and it's just it's magical, And we're all sitting there like, well, we're just like, push, projection, as we're now they're all about balance and listening to one another and making sure the harmonies were, and so I grew up knowing that.
Amazing.
And then there's that influence of my uncles being at university and us having the VHS and you just want to be, want to do that. Yes. And so it's how do you find that balance? And so, those clubs have had a huge influence on haka, particularly in Te Tauihu. And because back then, I think about, when we used to go to culture club, it wasn't just about haka, it was about having a community. And so I tipu ake au I te tai hapori Māori, ahakoa te nui ngā kaore he reo Māori. I tipu au I te tai, hapori ao Māori, and I waimaria hau I te hunga. ngā kai mātua i rāwā, Uncle Richie Mihaere, he had a huge influence over my whānau and their journey in Kapa Haka. And then, you know, like, we ended up giving back to his tamariki, teaching his tamariki haka. And so it was cool to see, you know, those people that invested in us, that what they invested in us, we were giving back, and we were giving to their tamariki and their mokopuna. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learnt about haka and te tauihu is that it's all been about the next generation. It's never been about us. And I feel like we're back at that place now where it's about our tamariki now, our rangatahi.
There isn't another vehicle, kia nei, like Kapa Haka, to really transform a community, bring a community together, have a safe space for te reo Māori, tikanga Māori. And I think that's what in Tāmaki Makaurau, Wakahuia Manutaki done for all of those people who didn't live, who were living away from their home, iwi. It gave them somewhere to be Māori. And it's amazing that you are carrying it on, because mōhio tāua, e harai te mahi, māma.
I au e tipu ana, i māoko taku tuahine, i mōhio māua ka waiho, ka tuku, e nei haupapa nui ki a māua. Harai te mea he hihia no māua.
It never is.
Nah, and so
about you. It's not about you. And what you are.
But we knew it was going to happen, you know. I remember like 2005, matatene ki Rangitāne, and my uncles were like, "Oh yeah, I'm not taking the group." We were like, "Hey," and I was 18. I just turned 18.
Wow.
And then they were like, "Yep," and I'm like, "I'm going to university." He nui aku mahi. No, ki te whakahaere koe I te kapa. Didn't really want to. And so that's like, you just get thrown in the deep end. And it was all good. Like, now that I look back, you know, he rangatahi tōna te whakaaro I rawa. And
18, that's a pretty big responsibility. And me, ana ki aku I
yeah. And so I was like,
wow.
Am I actually going to do this? Yeah, and e te kaumā whā te pakeke o taku tuahine. And we ended up, And so that round we were like, oh yeah, no, like we'll just go for like this little, like we'll do the campaign and then we're out. And then mea rawake, nearly 10 years and I whakahaere māua I te kapa. And I reira tonu, you know, ngā mātua, ngā whaia, hei arataki a māua. Engari, ko te nui ngā mahi I waiho ki a māua. And I think back to like some of the things we would do. Look, and it was because we just were so green. Like we just didn't know what we were doing. We'd never had to lead a kapa.
Yes.
Or, you know, like by ourselves. And so, and I was lucky that the komiti that we had, they were just like, you just worry about the haka, we'll worry about everything else. If you need anything else, waiho mai kia mātou. And so we saw that as we're going to write a wish list. But, you know, like, because that's where we were in our own lives. And so we wanted all these lists, like, we want this, this, and this. And they were like, unrealistic.
What was it like leading tutoring your pakeke?
My parents were the hardest to...
they were still doing haka?
They were still doing haka then. And they did all the way up until we finished in 2015 with Te Whatukura. The hardest one was you were like, you know, you'd have the kōrero, you know, koe te pauako, he kai haka kōrua. Yeah. Haere nei te wā. And then all of a sudden, hey, I'm your mum, like, or you know, or I'd hold on to it, and you get to the end of the campaign. I didn't like the way they used to me. I'm like, okay, but you know, koe te pauako, and and so like it was interesting navigating those relationships, and then like even aunties and uncles, so like my mum's siblings, and then people that I had grown up with who had, you know, been a tuakana to me. And then all of a sudden, my sister and I were tutoring them. And it was all, like, it was, they took it with a grain of salt, but it was also like, you could tell in their eyes that they were like, how dare you talk to me like this? I don't want to be in the second row. Like, all of those. And so, yeah, I think back to those times. And a little bit, it's easier with te hunga I pakeke mai ki tā māuataha.
Tēnā koe.
When you shift from being, it's just about the hapori, he hapori Māori tēnei, and when you start to think, do we want to take this seriously?
Yeah.
A shift has to happen not just within you, but also within the kaihaka.
Tēnā koe.
And koera te rerekētanga o te whatukura I te wā I wehe māua ki te kapa I whakatū e mātou ko kuhoa te pautu māro. I āta wānanga mātou, he a te whainga nui.
Ai.
And te hunga whainga nui, ko te whakatipu, ko te whakapakari I te ao haka I roto I ngā hapori iti, waho atu o tautahi. I te mea, te nuinga o ngā kaihaka no tāhuna, no murihiku, no Ōtepoti, no whakatū, no te taupautini. I whakaaro mata ake, kia huitahi tātou ki o tautahi, and whai rautaki kia tuku I ēnei mōhihoranga, I ēnei taonga, ki ērā hapori. E hara I te mea kaore he haka I reira, engari he rereke ngā wheako o ēnā ki a mātou, o tērā hapori ki a mātou. Let's bring that together and see what magic we can make and then send that back out. And so when we started Te Pautu Māro, that was the idea, was that we'd bring a whole lot of our friends together, but we had to give back in our own communities. So we weren't allowed to just sit there and be like, yep, we're doing this here. We have to go back out into our communities. And so, yeah, that was the focus of the Kapa was, okay, we need to develop ourselves, figure out like a style that we like, and then what sits underneath that we can take back to our hapori. And so, yeah, 10 years ago, that started on a eventful night in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
And because we just left Te Matatini and Jama had their team down in Tāhuna in Queenstown, and they were sort of in the same predicament. They were like, this is more about us growing the hapori than it is about the haka and about, competitiveness. And they were like, what are you fellas up to for the next round? And we're like, we're probably looking for a change. And then that was like the start of the trip. And then a couple of nights later, well, enjoying our time in the sun.
Yes.
And then this brilliant idea, I don't even know who came up with the brilliant idea. And then the next thing I remember is we returned to New Zealand and we had a page and we were all on this page and we were like, are we doing this? What's happening? Yeah. And that's how we started Te Pautu Māro. But then when we realised what we were doing, we're like, actually, we need to come together and have a proper hui. What is this about? What is the long game? How te whainga nui? And, we don't have any kaihaka. So what are we going to do about that? And so, yeah, we just went out to our friends. And then I remember we started off and te kura whakapūmau mātou, te nui ngō te wā. Tō mātou, waimari I tērā kura, I te mea, mo te ngā tau pia e toru I te tematanga, ko te kura whakapūmau tō mātou ahuru mōwai. And so, yeah, we were based there. A lot of raukura from all of the kura, or like, not from Te Matangi, but we did have, whare kura kids coming with us. And then majority of our kaihaka ended up being raukura of te kura whakapūmau, whānau tahi, te kurikaupu Māori o te poti, few from Arowhenua. And so, and then the rest of us, and then we realised, well, te nui ngō mātou he reo Māori. And then that's when we started to realise that there'd been a shift in te ao Māori.
Tēnā koe.
Te tomate reanga I te pū te reo Māori. Waimare ki ngā kaupapa o te kohanga reo kura kaupapa Māori. We were starting, we've just started a new team. And so, it was really interesting. And so, the start of Te Poutumaro felt like a shift into just a totally different way of thinking and doing because no tira reanga.
Aye.
And that's when we all started to think, oh yeah. And then all of our kids, everyone's like, oh, I'm sending my baby to kohanga reo.
Tēnā koe.
And all of those discussions started to happen. And my son, he was 5 when we first started. He's now 15. Yeah. And, all these babies they were babies then, are no longer babies. And a few of our kaihaka, we got to perform with our kids at Matatini. And that's a dream. Dream come true. And it was real funny. I was like, I'm hanging up the pee-pee now. What's happened? It's happened early. And it's great. So now I can step down and no. But, that's a dream. Awesome. A dream come true. And I had the privilege of performing with my parents. And tutoring them. But I also got to perform with a few of my aunties and uncles, my mum's siblings. And then I remember one year there was 4 of us first cousins. That's an amazing feat. Yeah. Thinking back to when I was growing up, kohanga reo had just started. We had no kura kaupapa Māori, we had no rūmaki, we had whānau classes in Pākehā schools. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to my son has the opportunity to have kohanga reo, kura kaupapa Māori, rūmaki. I became a teacher because of it, and so all of those things, we just live in a different world now. And I think back to, it's buzzy. I feel like it's so buzzy thinking back to growing up. And it was you had to go to Culture Club to get that fix of being Māori.
Aye.
And now, we can live in a Māori world if we desire. We just can't be lazy, which is hard. Which is hard. But
it is totally a shift in generations, and our parents' generations, it was about trying to survive as a Māori and wanting something better for their tamariki. And the groundwork that they laid down has allowed us in our generation to flourish in a world that, they could only dream of, a lot of our people. So to have, and that is a responsibility. That is our responsibility to give that for our kids. And so they grew up going, not knowing that world, there was no reo around. That it wasn't, hei te mea Māori, te rongo I te reo, te kite I te reo I runga I te pau ka whakaata I runga I te ipurangi. And Haka is a vehicle that a lot of our rangatei enter into the world. But mihi no iana, that's amazing, bro. What did you want to create, or how did you want to make things different when you fellas started Te Poutumaro, and obviously maybe going to the next stage of doing that with another group? What did you want to do differently, I suppose, and how did that happen?
One of the biggest things was for people to realize, because Haka back at home was, like I said, mo te hapori, and it was fun, but it was not very serious.
Yeah.
In the way that, everyone knew we were going to Matatini, but it was kei te pai, we'll get on stage, and then, then we'll be in tāmaki. It was a mindset that it was, we're just going because we have to go. Not because we really want to go.
Yes.
There wasn't that desire to really push ourselves beyond our limits. And when we started Te Poutumaro, it was we went back through sort of the previous 5 festivals, and in the bottom 5 was always a Te Waipounamu team. And more specifically, there was always a Te Tauihu team there. And I was like, we can't do anything about the now, but we can do something about the future. And it starts with us changing ourselves and being a better example for our tamariki. because we can't expect our tamariki to do things that we don't do. And so when we started Te Poutumaro, we're like, we have to have higher standards of ourselves, expectations of ourselves, not just in haka, but in everything that we do. And so it became a thing where it wasn't just about haka, it was about the way that we lived our lives, the way that we held ourselves in our communities. And so it became more than just haka. It became, well, if we want to live that here, we should live it everywhere. And then we'll be better examples for our tamariki. And then when we go back into our hapori and we say we want you to push and have these expectations, they know that we live them. And it was hard because we were like, I think we were like, you know, mid-20s, early 20s. And all we wanted to do was party, like have a good time. But we also knew that if we were going to do this, we had to meet the responsibilities. And so, yeah, e noho tahi mātou te toko whā, māua ko taku tuahine, Jermaine Mahia, ki te whakau i e rā mātou pono, e roto i a mātou. And I think back like 10 years ago, like we never thought that we would be where we are, just like with our whānau and our careers, and like we're adults. We were like, we're actually adults. Remember when we just used to have fun, and now we're just like you know, we all got kids, and like we all have responsibilities, and we all take them seriously. And I was like, but this is what we talked about. Also, we have responsibilities at home, like, and so we've started to be more involved in our iwi. Yeah, and that's been, like, Kapa Haka was the catalyst for that.
Yes.
And for a long time, we just, like, turn up to the AGM, vote, and we out of here. Have a kai, maybe get a scholarship. And, you know, like, those, like, typical blooming, like, rangatai. And then just something clicked. And it was like, actually, yeah, we got to give back to our own people. And so, yeah, Te Poutumaro was a mindset shift for us. And then we realised that, well, because we started to focus on our tamariki back home. Māua ko taku tuahine, we used to be kaiako, roto i te kapa Māori, roto i ngā rumaki. And then we got this, hey, I think it's time for you to come home. And we were like, not really. Like, nah. And then just planting that seed, it was like we looked through, like it's been 10 years. Yeah. We've got, like, I've got kids that I taught at primary school that are 20, you know, and 21. And it's like, yeah, actually, and all of these kids, they were all like I whakatipu I rā mātāpono. Kei te mōhio, kia māua, kei te mōhio, you know, they know our expectations. And so coming home was like, okay, well, yeah, probably we can do this. But, you know, then we have manu kuratahi in the middle, and it's like, oh, geez, we're all going to start. Weekend straight after manu kuratahi. Finish on Thursday, wānanga on Friday. Like, have the muster. And I'm like, yep, we're just doing it. Awesome. And so, yeah, I whakatu te tai kapa hau ki roto te tauhu. Yeah, and yeah, I'm one of the oldest in my new kapa. It's like me, I feel like my sister may be one of the oldest, and like, how rei te mea kaumātua māua, but whā, we feel it on a Sunday, because these young ones, they got some energy. And it's like,
there's knees in that back, you feel it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm never wearing a knee pad. I was like, oh, I might need a knee pad. Like,
I've got two.
And I'm just like, where do they get the energy from?
Oh.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
And even the ones that are like just slightly younger than me, they're like, oh, these fellas, what are they up to? Like, they're like going hard on the floor and then going out and playing touch.
That's right.
And then they come back and they're still like, and they're like, where do they get the energy? And they're up till 2 in the morning, and then they're still out, like, and then they're like crawling out of bed, but then they're on the floor, like. And I was like, what? How does this happen? I was like, I reckon if we had the same experience, we probably would have been the same.
Yeah.
You know, if we had the same opportunity as them, kaore kore, ka pērā rawa.
What are those mātāpono, ngā mātāpono, those fundamentals you're trying to instill in these, in our taioi and kai haka? to elevate them as a kaihaka? What are those things you're teaching?
Te mea tuatahi,
Ai.
ko te whakaiti.
Tēnā koe.
I tipu ake ahau I te tahi ao haka, e katoa o ngā pauako, ngā pauarahi, ko te mea nui, ko te whakaiti ki a rātou. I remember like growing up, there was never, like, so all of our pauako, they would sit next to someone different
Gee.
at every kai. Or every time they'd sit down, they wouldn't sit next to the same person. And they would have a genuine conversation to that person about how they were, you know, how's mum? You know, and really connected. And it grounded us in, hey, it's all right to be, like, not all right. And it's all right to, you know, that there's all these things that are happening out in the big world, but we've come here and this one person is us as who we are. Like, just those small lessons throughout growing up.
Gee.
And so when I was thinking about, you know, what do you want to instill in these tamariki and these rangatahi? And I was like, it's got to be a whakaiti. Like, all of the lessons that we were given growing up was, be humble, respect one another, you know, and that respect will be given back to you if it's genuine. And it was like, it's not just, and then that like ended up in everything that we did.
Yeah.
And so it became, you know, like in education, it's like, what are the transferable skills? They're endless in Te Ao Haka. They are endless. But yeah, whakaiti, te mea tuatahi. And then aroha.
Gee.
Every, like, my kaihaka, like, as if they're my brothers and sisters, as if they are my own tamariki, because at the end of the day, like, they end up being like that anyway. Yeah, and so, and that's a huge responsibility. And I think, like, we've got a group of younger ones that we're bringing through, and I'm like, all you see is like the power and the glory of being a pauako. But sometimes it can be lonely. I'm like, sometimes it can be lonely because you have a certain few that you can confide in. But when they're kaihaka as well, then you also are like some of the things I've got at kia noho tapu e rā kōrero. Sometimes it can be lonely because all of the weight's on your shoulders. And it's not that you're physically lonely, it's that you're so in your head, or you're so, like, ingrained in whatever you've got to get through that you forget to be in the moment. And it's really funny, and they're like, don't get it. And then I say to them, and it can be lonely at the time of setting lines. When you have to tell your mate or your partner or your cousin that either they didn't make the line or they're in a place that they don't want to be. I said, it can be lonely.
Hardest job of the...
Yeah, I feel like that's where you know whether ira mātāpono, whether they're living and breathing. Because, you know, like, this time we named the team on the weekend, and not one, you know, was upset. Every single one came to me afterwards at the end of one. Like, and that's when you know that foundation work that you've done at the start, the trust that you've built with that person, that they may feel mamai, but they've still come back and they've given you a hug. And, you know, they've asked for feedback. What can I do better next time? You know that those ira mātāpono, that we're living and breathing them. The last one I always, especially for my younger rangatahi and tamariki, is to be determined, you know, and have a sense of grit I said, and that's because you can get all the love and support and you could be as humble, but if you don't have that little bit of fire within you, then like when it gets to that time, like where it's, I need you to push a little bit more, you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that little bit of fire, determination, that grit, that resilience to take the feedback and really do it and work on it, and hear it through that lens of aroha and take it with humility. Like that's the last thing that I always talk to my tamari about is, yep, it's going to be hoha, you're going to repeat things, but that's when you know you've got to dig deep and get through it, and at the end of the day, it's all going to be worth it. And it's really funny because you see the tamariki, they're like, oh, I'm leaving. Like, I don't want to do this over and over again. And so they leave. And like I've always said, and some of my young ones are like, oh, see, they left. I said, they're just not ready.
Yeah.
Like within themselves, they don't have that yet. I was like, but let's not give up on them. Like, let's go. Let's start off next campaign. Let's go back to that kid and say, hey, ke toki mai koe? And because over that year, they may have developed those skills to be able to go, yeah, that was hard last time, but I'm going to stick at it this time. I was like, and all we can do is give them that support that they need to be here. And so that grit and that resilience and determination, like, and that's one that you can't really teach.
No, that's right.
Like, they've got to find it within themselves. Yes. And that's why, like, so with our younger ones that we're bringing through, like trying to build succession, is we've got to make sure that this place ends up being a safe place. I was like, because we've got all of these mātāpon, all these expectations, but remember what it used to feel like when we used to be part of this club and we just wanted to go to club?
Yeah.
We got to find the happy medium now.
Yeah.
with our particularly with our rangatahi nā tamariki, that whare mari ki te ao Māori, ki te reo Māori.
E nui rātou. E nui rātou.
Yeah.
Bro, I listened to you talk about, these mātāpono, and honestly, it's like, that makes so much sense. I've talked to so many tutors about the process of, not everyone can make the stage. And hear you unpack, like, if you have these mātāpono, which we all know, which we all talk about, but how they can help you in times like that. And it's about getting... understanding your kaihaka, yes, but if you give them these mātāpono, that it will help them, it will prepare them for those times. Yeah. But I think you've cracked it.
I don't know.
I think you've cracked it.
I'll see you in the next one. I know if I've cracked it.
Because we all go as tutors, go to that lonely place when you have to make those hard decisions, and those decisions have to be made, and it is part of te haipapa, koe rā te haipapa nui, make hard decisions, have hard conversations. But if you've shown them, if you've instilled whakaiti, if you've shown them love, then it is coming from that place. And if they really trust you and understand why, then that it's easier for their kaihaka to process. That's why I really love Haka ngahau, where it wasn't about competition, it was about ko te tū, ko te aroha. Pada te ngā mahi Kapa Haka i tō whaitua, i tō rohe, hanga kaupapa nui kei mua. I a koutou, what are the challenges, and e hanga whainga nui mo te Kapa Haka ki te waipaunama. Ki o whakaro.
I te wai timata hau i taku tūranga ki runga i te poari o te matatini. He rua noa ngā kapa pakeke i te whakataitai ārohe. And we had some real frank discussions at home. Like, what are we going to do about this? And so the biggest kaupapa that was on the radar was like, we can't do anything about the now, it's about the future. So we did everything that we could to put all of our energy into our tamariki and our rangatai. And so that's been our focus. And we're now just seeing the fruits of that hard work collectively across the rohe. And it was all in preparation for us to host Te Matatini.
Tēnā koe.
Te Matatini, well, you know, let's push back 2 years. So 2027, ka tai mai te motu ki te tauihu. And one thing we said is like, when it's at home, like, we got to have as many teams as we can because it's at home. Kapa iwi, you know, or whatever kapa it is. But we've got to have kapa from home. And so we're like, so we start with the babies and we instill all these mātāpono on them. They understand the expectations and then they step into these adult kapa that are prepared for them to come. On top of that, it was preparing our hapori, like our wider hapori.
Yes.
And so we decided to look at hosting Te Manakura-tahi and Kura Tuarua in the build-up to Te Matatini so that we could start building a profile for kapa haka in general in our rohe. And so from about 2018, we started to like market kapa haka way more. Like before, it'd just be like, we're just going to target our whānau and they're the ones that are going to come. And I reckon now 50% nearly of our audiences are now Pākehā.
Tēnā koe.
Our ngaho competitive teams, majority of them are Pākehā people.
Wow.
Like we've got 2 teams this year one out of the Polytech and one out of Te Ahua Te Reo Māori. And te nuinga he Pākehā, like 75-80% are Pākehā in those teams because they've learnt since 2018, their kids have been in kapa haka or they've taught in schools where they've got a kapa haka and they're like, how can we support? You come and learn 6 waiata and we're going to put you on the stage with 24 other people and you're going to help us grow kapa haka.
So cool.
And so it's as if there's been this huge shift, not just within our kapa haka communities, but in the wider community where they're like, yeah, we're going to go to the competitions and watch. So and, cool. You know, heaps of our te hunga kei te ako i te reo Māori, nuinga he Pākehā, I roto i te kuratini, I roto i, you know, te wānanga Aotearoa, they all offer to work. You know, they're all like, we'll be kaimahi, we'll do whatever we can, we'll clean toilets, or we'll go and cook kai for kapa. And it's a huge shift to where we were, even if I go back 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like I go back to when I was growing up, like you would never expect that many of our non-Māori whānau to be involved. And so, yeah, and like just different parts of our community. And that's been one of the like biggest changes towards Matatini is that the community has changed. Amazing. And they're, which I'm like, never thought would happen.
Amazing.
But and Haka has been the catalyst for that.
It's the blueprint for new Aotearoa, my brother.
Yeah.
And e mihi ana ki au mahi, you know, koutou. E mahi ana I ngā mahi, you know, and it's cool that you've seen the fruits of that o e rā mahi whakapaukaha. Hey pātai whakaputunga ki a koe, brother. What are your aspirations for te ao haka? And hea te ana mata o e nei mahi?
E rua pia ngā whāinga nui. I think, like I love the festival as it is,
Aye.
but I'm like, we've been 50 years now. And you think back to like, if you go back to 72, like what was it like then? How different are we now? What is it going to be in 50 years time? And how do we get there? And like, you know, and because I'm all about pushing the boundaries. So I'm like, are we still going to have a stage in front of the judges? Like, look at the Merry Monarch. They got a square stage. Everyone sits around it. Like, what would that do to Te Ao Haka? What would the ability to, like, have lighting and change the lighting through waiata to depict the, you know, the imagery that you're trying to portray on stage? What would that do to Te Ao Haka? And then, like, in the back of my head, I was like, and then, you know, like, we might not even be performing. It might be avatars in our implement, you know, like, you might
all wearing goggles watching it and stuff.
You know, or it might be, you know, you if you perform at regionals, like their kai haka gets like credits, and then all of a sudden they get like more skills, and you know, like I'm like, that could be a thing in 50 years time, but what are we doing to prepare ourselves for that? You know, like, and so we live in a technological world.
Yes.
And like AI is big now. Like, are we prepared for the influence of AI on Haka?
Composing words. Tried it. AI was all right, but yeah, no.
You know, like there's even the things like, well, that quarter of virtual marae.
Aye.
Like, we could end up with virtual festival. And so what does that look like? Like, how do we control the narrative so it becomes what we want it to be?
Tika.
And so, koera te tahi o ngā whakaro I roto i ahau I tēnei wā.
Because we want to be proactive, not reactive. Not just respond to what's happening to us, but create the future we want.
And like, we've got some amazing people working in that space at the moment. Like, let's utilise them. And then the other one is pēhea tātou e puri ki ngā taonga tuku iho. Like, we want to move with the times, but how do we actually do that? In a modern world, you know, like, I even think back, we've only been live streaming since, 2015? And now, like, that's ingrained in us.
Yes, it's expected.
Like, it's expected, and when it doesn't happen...
Which is just
why is it? And it's like the world's ended. But, you know, like, when did that... Like, I always think back to my first festival, and I was like, there's no experience like going to the festival.
Tika.
Like, there's no experience like being there live and watching.
Yes.
And I'm like, but there are whānau now that don't have that experience. Like, they don't go...
No, because of live stream.
Not even because I can sit in my home, I can eat whatever I want. I'm not paying $15 for a hot dog, like, you know, like, and that's cool. But also, I just think back to like, I went to Te Aroha 96, and it just blew my mind.
Yes.
Like, you know, like, being like, you know, you can watch it on YouTube now, but being able to say I was there, went to Wakahuia, sung the Lion King,
Yes.
and I'm like, you can't explain it.
No.
And then and you know, ngā tamariki o nei rā, they're like, oh, that's not even cool. Like, what did you say? What did you say? You went there. You don't know.
No.
Like, but even like, they're just like, no, I'm not going to go. I just watch it on TV. And I'm like, how do we, like, some of the things that, like, cool, the live stream's been an awesome innovation for Te Ao Haka. It's given us access.
Yes.
But, like, how much is too much? Like, when do we get to the point of saturation? There'll be whānau this year that will be like, oh, I don't need to go to Nelson to watch the Kura Tuarua.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's nothing like being there. Yeah. Like, I same thing, I remember my first Kura Tuarua, like 2002 in Christchurch, and there was nothing like watching like Raukura Waititi Ritana live. Like, there was nothing like it. And like, in growing up in a place that like Haka wasn't prevalent, and you got to sit there for 2 days and watch Haka, it was like the world like had stopped and everything was just like right in the world was happening right in front of you. It was mean. And like, but I feel like our kids just don't understand that.
Yeah.
You know, even like going from like VHS to DVD and then like a hard drive, like that was still a thing not too long ago, but now it's all on demand. You know, like, and our kids have click of the button, can just pull anything up, and so it's like, and like, tōra te wai mari, but also like, are we oversaturating it, saturating our kids to a point where like they become numb to when they are there, you know, like that is like
desensitized.
They're desensitized
they don't get that
to
feeling.
and so, and because like I feel it particularly in not at the last matatini, but like at 2018, I think it was, secondaries. I'm like, are you people going to clap?
It's a harori.
Paki. Like, and that was good.
They had to come by sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's like, when did we desensitize from actually listening, feeling, taking it all in, not just, oh, that was mean. Because that's what I, like, growing up, that's what I remember is they'll be like, yeah, you can be as flash and whatever you want, but ki te kore rongo i te wairua. Then, you know, you're just dancing around the stage. Right. You know, and if you don't have that connection to your waiata and the people don't feel that connection, and I'm like, those are, and then I'm like, how do we hold on to that? Like, on the first day of any competition, doesn't matter what age it is, like, just something inside me, like, I'll be there live, just something inside me is like, takes me back to, like, when I was a kid. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, a little bit of a tear. And then it's like, yeah, this is what it's about. It's not about the competition. No. Yep, this journey has been mean, but actually just being here in the middle of Te Ao Māori, everyone's here for the same thing. And I'm like, and if you can't feel that, there's something wrong. So those are the two things that I'm like, how do we use technology to our advantage, but also what disadvantages has it brought, and how do we hold on to the things that we really want to hold on to? Because Te Ao Haka is constantly changing, and we have influences, but also what influences do we have to ensure that we are creating the future that we want, and that we hold on to as much of the past that we can.
Yes. Rawera watu hua. Tēnei wānanga. Ko tino he hiri te ngā kaui, tēnei wānanga. Ngā tāua, brother. Ngā pauna mo kōrero. Ko ki taku kete i nā ki mai te tātu. Hei, he whakaturanga hi ika tēnei. Kore, kei te hoa, kei taku rangatira, kei te mātanga haka. Tēnā koe, ka nui te mihi, ka nui te aroha.
Tēnā koe pū. Ko te reo, te take.